Welcome to Nameless Debate Radio, where radioactivity is contagious.
What is up?
All right. So we're in Tavern 2?
Tavern at the moment, while we're talking about the DPC thing.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, should I pick that up and see?
Yeah,
see what you
I
guys
mean,
want?
I didn't really, for sure.
Okay, so on Facebook, I run a page called DPC or Dope Philosophy Crew, and there are 4 guys that participate in that.
How dope is the philosophy?
It's about as dope as it can be right now, which is to try and keep things as chill but as on point as possible. Like no pointless meanderings through the unnecessary tangents that people can usually go on, myself included.
That's the stuff, man.
Yeah, but still being open and accommodating to some level of nonsense just to hopefully extract what might be a morsel of truth that a person is smuggling, so to speak. So, I mean, I can clarify some of that, but really what I'm doing at on that page is I'm interacting with 3 other guys. It's me, an older guy, a younger guy who's into like integral theory, and another dad who is kind of a blend of all of us. So the other dad, he ended up posting some topic about like a Gnostic interpretation of Yahweh, and someone commented on it and basically disagreed with it, and then they had a little back and forth, and then the corrections to those corrections just started to ensue. Well, actually it was this way, and actually it was that way. So every guy kind of got involved a little bit, but the original poster kind of backed out once it got between the integral theory guy and the older guy. So the older guy has a bit of an interesting way of interacting with people. On the surface, I can readily acknowledge that it looks like someone who delights in straw manning and just a whole bunch of logical fallacies. He kind of appears to do some gaslighting techniques. He's just basically doing cartwheels around points most of the time, as far as I can tell, and trying not to take things seriously. He mentioned you, Matt, actually, with your guys' exchange that one day. It was probably a couple weeks back, and
Yeah.
he said how he responds to nonsense with it's just when he starts to party, is how he put it. So he doesn't start taking it seriously unless the other person is seriously, going through their own thought process. So you comported yourself in a way that basically kind of it almost commanded him to be present and interact with your logic, so to speak. And it went effortlessly as far as I could tell. But he doesn't do that same thing with anyone else. You're kind of the only guy I've seen be able to hold a position that he was able to like acknowledge and then not challenge. Everyone else he's challenged in a way that does this cartwheel thing that I'm mentioning. And I have a word for that. I call that the pata game, or the game that we play with ourselves and our imaginations when we don't really want to take a position, or we want to be petulant, or we want to just kind of go against the rules, and it's because I said so type stuff. And what strikes me as interesting in that is that he generally is always the guy that is going to poke at someone. It's like he loves being the court jester, poking at the king. But that almost invariably gets translated by others that are listening in, receiving him as, well, you're just straw manning, or now you're just, this is ad hominem, or this is that fallacy or the other. It doesn't matter which fallacy it is. He's just kind of, the integral guy called him a fallacy factory. And I thought that was kind of funny because that's on the surface what it looks like.
That is a funny thing to say, though.
It is, man. And it's like when you read it, I can't wait to
That's
hear what your
clever.
take
I'm gonna
is.
use that.
Right? I thought so too.
It's fucking golden, man. Fallacy factory.
And it's just good because it has the double F there.
Yeah,
But
man. That's called alliteration, by the way.
yeah, thank you. I knew that actually. I should have recalled that. But this fallacy factory dance that he's doing is how I'm interpreting it because, well, mainly because of yours and his interaction. If he didn't have that interaction, I don't know that I'd be giving him the same benefit of the doubt.
Oh, dude, he didn't say much that didn't make sense to me. It's
Right?
just that I don't understand exactly how it makes sense for him. But it wasn't that it was
Right.
implausible somehow.
Right. So I'm still in this space where I haven't figured him out fully. I think the idea behind his notion of synchronicity sounds like something interesting and something I'd love to have him elaborate on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I admit to not understanding that phenomena. I admit that I experience it and that I don't understand it. It seems to transcend probability. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a joke.
Oh, for sure. It's like when things align out of the limit of what could be kind of skeptically shrugged off. Like it's too much for skepticism to hold a candle to. And from the subjective perspective that's experiencing it, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of a side note about it, but like this whole conflict is basically the guy who's into integral theory. He wants standards basically, and he wants to be able to call fallacies and more or less just straight shoot it and not give any attention to kind of the extra layers that are at play in any given debate about any given topic.
Dude, this sounds fucking sick. I'm totally going to get involved.
Nice, yeah. That's why I'm glad I tagged you in it, because it's like, with your perspective, I think it will be a lot simpler and easier to understand, because I don't think I'm all that straightforward. But yeah, at any rate, the role that I started taking was trying to be playful, but like I said, it activated dad mode in me, because the way they were acting was very similar to the way my two boys act when they get into a conflict over fucking bullshit. And I can see it's irrelevant from the outside in, but to them, from their points of view, you know, that cup or that pen or whatever they're fighting over is the most important thing. And they have to fight each other to the death. Otherwise, I don't know, whatever is happening in their brain is running the program. So
No, I get that.
Yeah, I see that happening in a much more sophisticated way, and obviously with words and in a digital form. And so I'm like put into this place where I'm playing dad to two guys that aren't my sons, but it seems very similar, at least, or the feeling is that way, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the only way I can think of how to slice it in terms of the extra layers that are, because like when it comes to just
it looks
the
like
debate,
this has devolved a lot since it started.
yeah,
like when I scroll down and I see that pyramid, it's like, oh.
Yep. Exactly. And when he talks about incoherent babbling would be a step up.
I was just scrolling through it and the graphic just marks it as like, well, someone thinks it's gotten bad.
Yep. That's exactly what that pyramid's for. It's a good one too. Like,
yeah, definitely.
My wife didn't even
I don't post
before.
it myself, but I have a couple of friends who like to post it, and it's useful because since I'm disagreeable, I let people get, you know what I mean? Like, you can be pretty rude to me before I'll actually complain about it. I don't really care that much, you know what I mean? But like, you dive in the pyramid as I let you be rude to me.
Right. And I allow all the way down to the bottom of it, and even stuff that would break the bottom out from underneath, just on the off chance that the person is speaking from something that isn't a self-gaslit position, let's say. And then once I map it as, oh, this person is not aware that they're gaslighting themselves, that's when I start to solidify a kind of case against them.
This is gonna be an interesting read, dude.
I think so. And you'll probably side like I do in terms of just the straight logic and calling it as it is. Like the integral guy is, I'm trying to keep their names out of it just to keep it anonymous, but like to me that's the surface layer correctness of it. But the deeper layer of it that speaks more from what could be perceived as synchronicity has really something that to me is unignorable.
The archetypal layer, let's say.
Let's say that. Thank you. That seems to me to be compelling enough reason to hear him out, because if you just keep pulling that string, it's eventually going to give way to where he's actually standing, because he can only dance so much before we all map the pattern, and the things that he says will just end up kind of imploding on themselves, or not. They'll hold weight or water, as it were. But yeah, my position is really one of trying to be peacemaker. And what's funny is the accusation that, the older guys jumping to conclusions. It doesn't prevent the integral guy from jumping to a conclusion about my motives or my intentions, which are generally like I am authentically pursuing peace at the highest level imaginable, and from the deepest layer of foundational premises that I can possibly muster.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So like I kind of clarified it. Let me throw this word at you, or this sentence. I thought of it as presuppositional imposition with a dash of modal fallacies.
I'm gonna have to read it all, and I can't really do it when we're talking. I can comment on it.
Gotcha.
But I'm just reading a little bit through it, and I saw this thing. It says like compulsive reductionism. It's interesting because I've been thinking like sort of like absentmindedly for a little while about the fact that people say that something is too reductionist, and that I sometimes make that criticism, but when other people make it about me, it tends not to be justified. And I think that comes down to the fact that like there's a differentiation in reductionism that isn't clearly made. I've never heard anyone clearly make it, and that is like you have to be just as reductive as is necessary to get down to the bare minimum, so that you can have the depth in explanation that's necessary to capture reality, basically. So you have to be reductionist to the degree where you can establish the depth consistently.
Yeah. And find the blocks that you can use to build up from there.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the problems with people who, like, that's what, it's interesting though, because you just say, like, I found myself saying, like, that's a tad reductionist, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm the reductionist, man. You know what I mean? What does that mean? That seems like such a strange and nebulous comment. It's a tad reductionist.
It is.
The fuck do I mean by that, right? But the thing that I mean by that is something that is a little bit harder to put into words. So I think I'm just opting for what's easy, right? What I mean is like, that reduction leaves out nuance that is necessary to like the situation, basically.
Yeah, I think to satisfy the preferences of subjectivity, perhaps.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like it's similar to the criticism that I make of people who say that's just semantics, right? Like the most base level criticism of that criticism is that that's not what you mean. You mean something else, probably, even if it sort of like broadly indicates what you mean.
Right.
You know, so like for instance, even if the other person is just like equivocating or moving the goalposts, etc., right? That's probably what you might be referring to, but like there's better names for that. That's why we have the other terms, and it's like this interesting one where like the fact that you would make such a mistake indicates that you don't understand the relevance or the value of the word that you're using. Semantics, what is that?
Right.
The idea that you would say it's just semantics means that you don't even know what you're saying, because the technical meaning of the words that you use is about as important as it gets when it comes to like when you're trying to articulate to someone what they're doing wrong, and the way that you do it is you say that's just semantics. You are a joke.
Yeah. Well, you've dismissed the thing that could help you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I can't even understand it, man.
Well, that's what I think too, in terms of like there is an appropriate basis for reductionism when it comes to reality, and
Yeah, I just mean like when because it's like an offhand comment I use in conversation sometimes when someone has done an incorrect reduction, a
sure,
reduction that like attempts to do it properly but like leaves out important bits and so is not like properly explanatory, right? But what
right?
I say is that's a bit reductionist, and that's not a very good criticism in my opinion.
No, it isn't. But I think if you were to clarify the scope of it, like if it's pertaining, because I don't think it's good to start out with reductionistically with objects of subjectivity, just because there's a lot to kind of weed out in terms of whether or not a person is even going to accept the values that are imposed by determinism and reductionism. So, like, right off the bat, I reserve reducing things too simply when it comes to, let's just say, psychology. But then when it comes to reducing things for objective reality, I think it's really good to cut right to the chase and go right to the base. I didn't mean to make that rhyme. Because otherwise, both parties don't really have a thing to stand on in order to facilitate a self-analysis that's even worth reducing to and for with. And so a bit reductive, it's like it's not a valid criticism for sure, but like I think it makes more sense to use it in subjective terms, like not to be too reductive there, just at first, just to get get your whistle wet a bit.
But I am reductive at first, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that's what I mean. I'm a reductionist. That's why it's not a good criticism for me to be putting across, because, like, the thing that I do is I walk into a conversation and I say, well, here is what you're basically saying.
Yeah. Chop this, chop that. Don't need any of
Yeah.
this. Well, I mean, it's a bit hypocritical if you aren't willing to receive it back. But if you're willing to receive it back and then respond to it in kind, or even expand and amplify what you're saying so that it fits the preferences of the one that lodges that criticism, then bring them down and see how that criticism isn't valid. Because that, I think, to say that something is reductive is to stand in a layer of complexity that one is not willing to kind of cross that threshold yet and say, no, things are much more complex than that. You can't make it that simple. And from that point of view,
I know,
you
but
can't
I
yet.
feel like what you just said was the actual correct way to say it, though. Do you know what I mean? Because,
Thanks.
like, that's too reductionist. Just doesn't capture the meaning
No,
that you're looking for.
I agree. And they're looking for complexity, likely because they operate from the presupposition that that is the basis of all things already. Like, and it is quite possible that all things, once fully factored in by something that gives us a larger vantage point than we can presently account for as a species, perhaps it will be so complex that we require machines to help augment the understandings that we're going to need to make sense of the world. But until that point, it really is a presupposition that doesn't have anything other than, I think, the value system preferences of those that would maybe be like kind of amateur physicists or scientists or people, scientific enthusiasts, that they see all the information that is being communicated and then automatically conclude it's complex. Everything is complex. Jordan Peterson does that a lot, actually.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's just saying it's really complex, and you have to like untangle this and look at and fair enough. At least from a psychological vantage point, there's a lot to weed through before you can even get to a space of some self-reflective clarity that accommodates another mind with you in that same mutual space of realization. But I don't know. There's a lot of really just natural ways that people can communicate where you don't even realize that you've been led to a space of clarity and both people feel good. Like, it could be talking about football, and two guys are just agreeing about their favorite team, and all of a sudden they like each other more. It's kind of the same thing, just, rinse and repeat at different levels of analysis.
That's an interesting one. What do you think the principle at play there is?
For me, I think it's I have to speak about my own way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I can only do that because I'm not questioning the basis of reality anymore. If I were still questioning the basis of reality, or if I hadn't accepted a certain set of axioms, let's say, as my necessary starting point to just start even making an opinion about something, then I wouldn't be able to say it as I said it.
Mm-hmm.
But before DM theory, let's say, I did the same kind of act, but it was a pretense at base that would opinionate and back that with confidence, and then hold that structure up like this shiny toy, saying, hey, play with this toy, see if it works for you. It works for me, maybe it'll work for you. And I kind of see the older guy in DPC doing that. Like, I see a lot of people doing that, to be honest.
This would be Jay, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Doing what, sorry?
Kind of just like inventing presuppositional toys that allow someone
Would this
to
be
have
synchronicity?
Yes, yeah, that's my suspicion of it, let's say.
Presuppositional tools.
Yeah.
He would not accept that characterization, though.
No, he would think it as an objective feature of.
He'd probably think that was a bit of sophistry, to be honest.
True, very true. It's because I look at anything that is synchronistic as pertaining to the subjective architecture of.
Yeah, but I think what he's saying is that maybe there is something more to the relationship between the subjective architecture and the objective architecture that we know. He doesn't seem to object to my account of the relationship of it. It seems to me that he is suggesting that there is just more to be discovered about that relationship.
I couldn't agree more, to be honest. There is more to be discovered, and I do think that there's more to be even measured.
And you and I have talked about the incredible coincidences of synchronicity.
For sure, dude.
I have trouble believing that there's not some kind of actual explanation for it. My reductionist approach falls short, in my own opinion. It just doesn't capture. Yeah, man, I can't explain to you how it can seem beyond probability. You can, I can make the rationalization. I am probably just making mistakes, and I'm probably just biased, and I'm not selecting my evidence properly, etc., etc. But at the same time, some of them are coincidences on levels that only become become visible to me later, like levels of complexity and significance that seem personal to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think that I know enough about the world to say that that's nothing. It doesn't feel like nothing.
No, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's nothing. But
that's what the reductionist approach is. It's to say it isn't really anything. It's your mind, right? You just don't know what's happening. But I don't know if that's true. I think
that's the magic of it, though. Don't you?
No, but there's an intuition about it, which is like the thing that we say about me and Sammy and you and Harmony, right? That's sort of like the same thing. It's like the world has an archetypal structure in some sense, phenomenologically, right?
Okay.
And when it comes to your experience, that structure, it's something like the way that the phenomenological experience interacts with the world is extremely hard for you to determine, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so the synchronicity that we experience, it could just be part of the phenomenological structure, or it could be a relationship that the phenomenological structure has with the world that we do not understand.
Well, that's what I think it is. But I think
I feel like that's what he's aiming for, man.
But here's where I think we kind of converge then, is that, have you seen the movie Lucy?
I actually have not, no.
There's a really good, at least visual way to accompany this thought that I'm going to share. It's like, the movie, do you mind if I kind of just run through the topic?
No, that's fine, dude.
Okay. So she's like she's just a regular human that comes into contact with a chemical that gives her like superhuman perception. And what she ends up being able to kind of very quickly develop is an ability to sense all the information streams around her. So like she's able to perceive the data streams from satellites to cell phones. She can see like the heat signatures of the sun, the kind of chemistry of plants and animals and all that. Like she's able to perceive the like almost matrix code of it. And the suggestion, I think, at least in visual form, is that all of that information is, from a DM theoretic point of view, just a static pre-encoded structure which the phenomenological experience is moving itself through, as like we are the moving image of eternity, so to speak. And the more we expand our bubble of perception in terms of up to the limits of our ability to think, know, feel, or perceive, or judge, or any of the different ways of inputting information into our subjective systems, that we then accord ourselves with a greater degree of the deterministic structures that underlie the mechanics of everything.
How about we say we are being moved through?
That sounds actually probably better. I'm speaking...
Because we are moving through suggests that we're doing it voluntarily.
Right, and I wouldn't try to make that claim. I do think that we have no choice but to move forward in time, and what we perceive as time, essentially.
Absolutely, man. I definitely agree.
So there's something of like at least some words to explain a little bit about what I think synchronicity is. It's just a larger understanding of the interconnectivity of our role with the environment.
Yeah, but I think that's what I mean is because like I admit like I don't understand that, and I would love to.
Oh, well, I would love to
like
be.
There's something to understand, and maybe he knows. I don't know, you know.
Right, like he has peered behind the veil a bit and peeked at the source code of it, so to speak, and will be able to share some of his subjective strategies at accessing that.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you were like describing DM theory with X theory long before you met me, so you had lots of the pieces.
Totally.
But until I came along and told you how they were justified, you just had these true bits that you know, were like saying were true, and you were right. And I think maybe he has a true bit, but just doesn't know how exactly it is true.
Precisely, dude. That's exactly what I'm trying to say here. And to me, the integral guy isn't really factoring that part into his analysis and dismissing the fallacy factory that is coming at him, because that's the front, that's the firewall, I believe, that protects. Like, truth is almost guarded by lies, is almost how I would put it simply.
That's a really cool metaphor, man. It's definitely a lot of defensiveness emanating off it.
Yes. And you can't quite even be aware of how the lies that you're saying, either to yourself or to others, are affecting your ability to communicate the truth you think you're speaking from. And in a way, what's happening is all is being obscured because you can't be, what I'm going to just say is DM theoretic enough to postulate without the mysticism that usually accompanies conversations about the transcendent.
Man, that was beautiful.
Nice. Dude, I've been dying to have these chats with you in this way.
Definitely, dude. This server's a really great place for it.
It's so easy to do. I'm getting a lot of my friends interested too now, because I want to almost start directing people from Facebook to here.
Yeah, man, that's the way to do it. Because I'm always here, dude. Like, whenever I have free time. I'm looking for someone to talk to. Tell me why I'm wrong. Let's hear it.
I would love that, man, because I tried to do it through text and typing, and it's just getting so cumbersome now.
Yeah, it just takes too long. That's all.
Right? Could be
The
cleared up
input
really
output is
quickly.
really low.
Right. So yeah, that's my basic gripe, and I do see that there's value in both of these guys, and there is no reason to dismiss either one of them. I just kind of
In sync. Sorry.
yeah, go
in
for it,
sync.
man.
What the? Wait, did NSYNC literally leave the? Oh my god.
No, he said.
How do you not even look at the goddamn fucking?
Oh my goodness. No. Your name. Okay, so.
This cunt.
So I didn't have the things for. Okay, you know what? Fuck you. Your face is a faggot.
Fuck
but
you. Your mom's face is a faggot.
That may be true, but could you please tell me where the fuck to leave to get that goddamn recording bot out of there so it doesn't record every fucking thing everyone is saying?
In recording commands. What are you talking about?
Let's see.
This guy. Am I right? This fucking guy
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even know how to fucking make a
Alright,
record.
I'll
No,
begrudgingly.
you have to go into the other fucking room though. Can't do it in here. You'll make out.
No. I know that, but I have to fucking find like you're telling me I have to post it in X channel, right?
It's in debate rooms.
Debate rooms.
This guy.
No. Hold on. I hate this garbage. We will figure out a solution to this.
Do you not know? How can you not fucking find it? God damn, here.
Oh my goodness. Okay, good.
No, don't.
Thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and join us in the Nameless Debates Discord. We hope to see you there.